Hi, welcome to Paranormal Kativity. Tonight I want to talk about the cursed statue, which more recently has become the cursed crone of the Catskills. In the very beginning of 2016, a guy named Danny and his friend decided to go hiking in the Catskills, and they ended up coming across a statue inside of a cave way off trail. This area already kind of has some bad vibes to it. There's a lot of rumors of people going there to do various worship of darker entities. There's rumors of animal sacrifices. So it's really an area that already gets kind of like a bad reputation. But they go in there and they find this statue. It's near a small campsite where like the campfire had once been. And the statue itself is standing with some leaves and debris and dirt and grime and normal stuff around and on it, and possibly some hair left on it as well. So they check out this statue. It's really creepy. The statue itself is hand carved, fairly small, but it has nails hammered into the eye sockets and a noose made out of some kind of cord tied around its neck. Danny is really creeped out by this, understandably so, and he's like, you know, we need to leave this stuff alone. But his friend has the smart idea to take it with him, because to him, he doesn't really have much belief in any of this kind of stuff. So to him, it's no risk, it's no danger, it's just a creepy statue, and he wanted to take it, so he did. So he gets home, and a few days later, Danny gets a phone call from his friend saying that he thinks the statue's haunted. So this is understandably way out of character for his friend, since he isn't into this kind of stuff in any way, but he listens to see why this reasoning is possible in his mind at this moment. So it started out where he was hearing banging sounds and knocks in his house. That's pretty dismissible by most people, right? Then he started having a recurring issue where he was waking up in the middle of the night with a strong feeling that something was watching him. Shortly after this, he started noticing that the statue would not be where he left it the night before, and that there was a strong smell of pond water in his place. And at first he thought maybe it was somehow his dog, you know, moving the statue around, but really the dog kind of was freaked out by it. Ever since the statue came into his house, the dog was completely staying away from it and actually started having some issues where it was having accidents in the house, which it never had. So the dog was already acting not like itself in the presence of this statue, let alone wanting to go near it. So that idea quickly got dismissed as that's probably not the dog moving the statue. So one night he wakes up to hearing knocks on his door around 3 in the morning. And so he gets out of bed, goes to look outside, opens the door and checks it out. There's nothing. On top of there being nothing, there's like nobody on the street, no vehicles on the street. He has a motion sensor light that turns on when somebody's approaching his house. That's still off. So he really doesn't understand how somebody could have knocked on his door that loudly. But as he's analyzing the situation, he gets this overwhelming feeling of regret, like dread, where he's like, I should have never opened this door. Why did I open this door? So he really is starting to feel like there must be something going on with this statue. So he decides to go over to Danny's house the next day and have a movie night and try and just decompress and forget about stuff at home for a while and try and just chill for a bit. So the night after movie night, he goes home and the place kind of feels normal. It doesn't feel overly creepy, and so he's a little relieved that the house doesn't feel weird. He goes in, makes sure he's all locked up safe for the night, and goes to bed. He actually gets to sleep in a little bit, which is nice because he hadn't had that lately, but he woke up to his dog barking and freaking out. So he gets out of bed and goes to try and investigate what's going on. So he heads down his hallway to investigate, and he starts to notice that pond water kind of smell is super strong in the house. And then he looks down and realizes there are like wet, muddy, shoeless footprints in his house on his carpet. He gets to the living room and he notices the statue is moved. He goes to try and approach the statue so that he can pick it up, move it, check it out, whatever. And he starts to hear breathing The breathing sound isn't his own. It's not his dog. And according to him, it sounded like his grandpa with a tracheotomy. So a very raspy, hoarse kind of breathing coming out of nowhere, just in the living room with him. So after this happens, he grabs his dog, he goes over to Danny's house, and he starts staying in Danny's guest room. And Danny decides to go onto Reddit and reach out to the paranormal community that's there and see what people think of what's going on. Most people felt like the best thing to do would be to return the statue to where they found it. And a vast majority of those people who recommended that also said you should leave some type of offering along with an apology stating, you didn't mean to offend it, and that would kind of hopefully appease whatever was attached to it. And then the other people who were in the discussion, most of them just were warning against not destroying it in whatever method that they were talking about. They were like, don't burn it, don't bury it, don't throw it in the river. So there were lots of different comments about what you should and shouldn't do, but one person kind of had a different idea. In the comments, there was a guy who had a recommendation for him to reach out to Greg and Dana. They are a couple that have a traveling museum of the paranormal and of oddities and various haunted objects. So over time, he decides that maybe he should actually reach out to these people. So he contacted Greg Newkirk and Dana Matthews, explained the situation. They too felt like the best thing to do would be to return it to where they got it and apologize for it. And then they also said if for some reason they were unable to do this, that if they wanted to, they were used to handling and kind of analyzing and going over other objects that had similar activity, so to let them know if they needed to handle it or keep it safe for a while. So a few days later, they got an email. In the email, it said that Danny and his friend decided that they were going to go get the statue and return it to the cave. When they got to his apartment, it smelled super strong like the pond water. And when they went in the apartment, the muddy, wet, gross footprints were still there, still visible, and the statue was not where it was left. As soon as they kind of got a glimpse of the living room and looked to the hallway, it was found in the hallway, but it looked as if something had picked it up and thrown it against the wall, and there was a crack down the wall above where the statue ended up laying. So they approach the statue in the hall, and they start explaining how they're sorry that they'd taken it and that they plan to return it to the cave where they got it. So they're going through their apology and their plans for it. The dog just starts freaking out while they're in the midst of this apology, and so they go try to investigate and see what's going on with the dog. They get into the living room again. The dog seems to be barking outside, but in the living room, both of them claim to see an entity. This entity is of a old, naked woman, dripping with water, crouched down next to his shelves in the corner of the living room with what they explained as dark, glowing eyes. They both are very scared, clearly, obviously, anybody would be, and they run outside to be with the dog. So after they'd ran outside, they had kind of decided in the midst of the apology and all of the crazy stuff that had happened that they were really way too scared to go back to that cave. And they had this feeling about them that they really should never, ever go back. So in the daylight, with their dog, they decide we need to get this statue, we need to get it out of the house, and we need to contact Dana and Greg and see if they really will take this. So they do go back in the apartment. There's no more creepy old lady. So they get the statue, grab it, put it in a pillowcase, throw it in a box, throw it in the trunk of the car. They end up sending it to Greg and Dana, and they do what they do with most of the objects that they get. They kind of catalog it when it first comes in. So they took a lot of photographs, measurements, wrote some notes, kind of just detailed the encounter and what the actual physical object was. And since they collect haunted objects for a living, that's kind of their usual protocol when something comes in. So after that, they left in their office and went about their day. Later that night, they're hanging out and watching a movie, and they start hearing a lot of commotion coming from the office. At first, they think it's their cats. So they head back that way and try and check out what's going on. The cats weren't in that room at all. They were actually in a different room and kind of hiding, a little bit scared of whatever just made that noise. So Greg goes into the office to fully investigate what happened. Everything's in the place where it was before, except for one thing. So the only thing that's out of place in all of the office is a really small figure of Jesus. But this Jesus figure was attached to a cross hanging on the wall above where this figure was sitting in a chair. And it's not like it just broke off and fell. The figure is missing an arm. The arm is still attached to the cross, and the figure is all the way across the room in the pathway of walking into the room, nowhere near where that was hanging. After this occurred, they decided to set up a surveillance camera that's motion activated just in the office with that figure in frame to see if it did anything. And of course, if you watch any kind of motion activated thing, occasionally I'm sure you're gonna get like lights from different windows or bugs or things that maybe are paranormal, but if they have a bunch of things in their collection, they couldn't necessarily say was from that. So a lot of things were kind of cataloged but not really noted as being from that figure being in that room. Until March 2nd, between 3 and 4 a.m., the footage they caught is of the figure actually moving. It doesn't move a lot, but it does move on its own in the middle of the night. And so I will link below the link for you to actually watch what they caught on camera. It's really creepy. A few weeks after they caught it moving, they ended up having an instance where they smelled pond water in the house, and Dana found footprints that were wet in their house, but not on the floor this time. Even creepier, they were standing on the back of their sofa. So they have a couple more days with this really strong pond water smell, and they do feel an energy around them that wasn't there before. Just a sense of watching, being around, knowing what's going on in the house. After a while, Greg gets to a breaking point where he's like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And they do deal with different objects that have a high level of energy. So they have their own ways of properly handling it. So he decided to go in and get the statue, have a kind of conversation with it, and explain, you know, if we hadn't taken you in, things would have probably happened to you that weren't so great. You could have been destroyed. You probably wouldn't have been taken back to where you came from. So at least here you're safe, but you need to have a mutual respect for us. It was basically the vibe of the conversation. And he ended it with, if you don't, you're going in the box. And for them, in the box is kind of what they do is they lock away objects that are too aggressive and too active so that it kind of has solitary confinement and it can't do the things it was doing before. As soon as he utters those words, Dana in the other room hears water rushing and calls out for Greg to come in there. They assume it's like a broken pipe, so they're going into their house, you know, to investigate that further. So once they get into the hallway, the sound stops completely. So they know it's not a broken pipe because that wouldn't happen. And then they hear a thud coming from behind them in the living room. They go back, and it looks like the statue had rolled off of the coffee table and rolled under the entertainment center that had their TV on it. So Greg goes to go grab the statue. As he gets down there to get it, he hears Dana yelling and rushing up to be next to him, and she happens to catch the TV as it was starting to tip onto him while he was crouched down looking underneath the TV stand. Then immediately following that, they hear 3 really loud bangs, hard enough to where the light in the room flickers and the things that were hanging on the wall shake. And they go, okay, that's it. Grab the statue, put it in the box. So now it is a part of their traveling exhibit of haunted objects, but it does have its own special locked away box whenever it's traveling. And it is on a look but don't touch restriction. It seems like that rule is pretty easy to follow because according to them, most people have a natural reaction where they don't want to look at the statue, let alone touch it. And the few people that do feel inclined to look at it a lot of them experience weird sensations. The most common one being experienced is the feeling of their eyes burning, like it doesn't want to be looked at. So in between tours, of course, it lives at their house, and they do different things from time to time. So last year they did do a 24-hour live stream of just that statue surrounded by different objects to either trigger it or measure activity. And they did get something that came up on that 24-hour live feed as well. So if you want to see that, there's another link below to see the activity from that. Overall, this statue is just still surrounded by questions because nobody knows who made it, why it was created, what it was really used for. When the noose part was added, because it looks like it's much newer than the statue itself or the nails in it, they, being in the realm of work that they are, have a lot of connections, and Chip Coffey is somebody who is familiar with this statue as well, and somebody that I love in general because he's amazing. And he has a feeling that he might know what possesses this statue. There's supposedly a Babylonian demon that's associated with water that has 50 names, but is most commonly called Marduk. And that's what Chip thinks is attached to this. But there are other people who theorize a lot of different things, and a lot of people who even experience things from a long distance that can't really be explained just whenever they're on like live feed with it, or whenever they look at pictures of it or see it in person but don't actually touch it. So there's just a lot of weirdness surrounding this entire story. I came across it a while back and hadn't read the updates from Greg and Dana since they'd acquired it until I researched this. I didn't even know they had a traveling museum of the paranormal and haunted objects, and I'm like, this exists? I need to meet you people. I think it's such an interesting story, has so much claimed activity that I would just want to experience it for myself, or at least get to see it. So here's hoping that maybe someday I'll be able to check it out in person and just see it, because it seems amazing. So if somehow they ever come to Indianapolis, we should all do a meetup and check out this traveling museum together, because it'd be amazing. Let me know if you guys had heard of the Crone of the Catskills statue, or what you think of it in general, because it's just a really fascinating story with so much detail of personal accounts with it that I think it's one of the stronger instances of something having something attached to it that I've read. And I know I got these ladies who supposedly have attachments, but I haven't really had much activity with them. And I do want to give you a brief update. A lot of you, whenever I posted about the sound that we heard when we woke up, I believe it was in March, majority of the comments are, you guys have haunted dolls. It has to be the haunted dolls. I just wanted to clarify, at the time that we had that happen, I only had the one haunted doll, and I genuinely do not think anything I've ever came across in the paranormal realm that I've ever experienced myself has ever had that strong of an ability. So I really don't think it could be associated with them, but since then I have opened the door and asked them if for some reason somehow they were to attribute to that activity to please recreate it so I could confirm it, and it has not happened again. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I did take into account your guys' advice, but I really don't think it's them. I still have no idea what woke us up that night. But anyway, little tangent. Sorry. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can always leave a thumbs down. Be sure to check out the website that Greg and Dana run, because they have documentation of all of their haunted objects, and I'm still kind of digging through their website because it's awesome, so you guys should too. Thank you again so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications so that way you get notified every time I upload. I'm Kat, and this is Paranormal Kativity. Have a strange day. Bye!